All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the joint meeting between the Planning Commission, City Council, and we are with Leland Consulting today. And today is July 24th, and we are starting at 4 p.m. I will have Carla take it away.
Fantastic. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So welcome, planning commissioners and city councilors. We're very thankful that you took some time out of your busy day to be here this afternoon. We know it's an unusual meeting time, so we just thank you again for accommodating the schedule and to meet together, which we're pleased about because this is the comprehensive planning work, and there will be other times in the future where the Planning Commission and City Council will have some joint meetings as well. But for tonight, this afternoon, this evening's meeting, we are really thrilled to have our consultant, Leland Consulting Group, here in SQUIM. As I've briefed both the bodies. They are a consultant that's assisting the DCED staff and myself with the comprehensive plan update. They've been working on some really intricate technical work through our land capacity analysis. And Andrew and Jennifer, another member of their team, and Travis and I, we've been meeting for about over a month now, and we're dialed in. So we're very excited to be able to start running our land use model within, I think, even within a couple days. So that will be helpful too, because the outcome of that land use model also informs our transportation planning, our utilities planning, so we can get all things now moving forward for our growth planning. But for today, the other part of their scope of work, their project here in SQUIM is to do a housing and market, economic market analysis for the city. This will also inform the comprehensive plan, our land use, our future land use map, our land use designations, and recommendations to development regulations updates. And they've spent all day. We have booked them from beginning to end today, and they will be back tomorrow meeting with stakeholders, meeting with the senior management team, meeting with the city manager, taking a tour of the city, and they're concluding their day here, meeting with you all and listening to your thoughts on a number of questions. You all should have received an email from Emily with some discussion starters, conversation starters that they will have before you, and they do have a short presentation. So with that, I just wanted to again say thank you, and I'm going to turn it over to our consultant, Leland Consulting.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Shook from Leland Consulting. We're really excited to be here, to get to talk to you, and to work with the city on this comprehensive plan, especially this economic and market analysis that we know is going to be so beneficial to the city. This is my first time in SQUIM, and we went on a big tour of the whole city today. And, and all the places that we work, you can't tell from a map what a place is going to look like. And I mean, I knew SQUIM was going to be beautiful, but I didn't expect it to be this beautiful. So I'm excited to be here with you all.
Hello, everyone. Andrew Oliver with Leland, and I subconsciously chose a purple flavor. Okay, I'm just going to go through a couple quick slides by way of introduction to us and to what our scope of work is in this project, and then we can move on to hearing from you all, which is why we're really here. So the next slide, I think is. Oh, that's okay. No worries. Oh, okay. So that's what we're going to do, as I just said. I forgot we put that one in there. Sorry. Okay, thanks. So we're a Leland Consulting Group. We're a small firm, 7 people based in Portland, Oregon. We work all over the West primarily. For the past couple of years, we've worked on a lot in Washington State, also in Oregon, Utah, Idaho, and a little bit in the Midwest. We do, planning on a larger scale, such as comprehensive plans, and then also down to site-specific redevelopment strategies. We work with cities on public-private partnerships. So a wide variety of things, but mostly focused around housing, economic development, and real estate economics. And this is just a little brief snapshot of where we've been active in the past 2.5 or 3 years as part of the current comprehensive plan cycle. So all over the state, we've done a lot of interesting work around, land capacity and housing needs, and the new GMA housing framework, which we'll talk a little bit about later, but also on economic development and some elements for economic development, ranging from, of course, as you see, the Puget Sound out to Eastern Washington as well. And as part of the SQUIM plan, we're doing these three components of our scope. So the land capacity analysis, as Carla said, we've been working very hard at, and it's been great to work with her and Travis on dialing in, what the data tells us and ground truthing where we see that there's potential for redevelopment. And you'll see some results of that pretty soon, I'm sure. But today, as Jennifer mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about the housing and economic analysis. I guess the income bands kind of play into all of this. I've just put that on that slide by way of saying that, as we know, there are these targets for housing at a variety of income bands and housing types. And as far as the LCA goes, we and you all know there's a lot of developable land in SQUIM, and a lot of it is in the single family zone. So we are, mostly focused very carefully on understanding what the capacity is for other housing types, and that's going to play into the housing market analysis as well. So Jennifer will give you a very brief overview of the scope, and so you can, have an idea of what we're working on. If you have questions on that, and then we'll go on to hearing from you all.
Great. So you can go on to the next slide. So the purpose of this study as part of the comprehensive plan is to provide this market-based foundation for, the goal and policy updates that are going to guide what the city is going to do over the next 20 years, identify and address potential barriers to commercial and housing development. We spoke to a lot of local developers this morning, but we know, that's one part of the picture, and you all have another part of the picture, and we're trying to put all those parts together. Identify SQUIM's lane. So what makes SQUIM a great place to live and work? What makes it different from other places? And how can the city build on that into the future and really play to the city's strengths and attract investment and economic development? Also evaluate the potential impacts of planned developments. We know there's a lot of activity going on, including the West Bay development that would be a pretty big new source of housing in the city. So how is that going to impact economic development and housing? And then provide strategies, like I said, for building on those existing strengths and taking advantage of any potential new market opportunities. So there are 4 components to this analysis. The first 2 are the economic market profile and the housing market analysis. We're going to take the information that we got from stakeholder interviews and our conversation with you all, and combine that with data that we're going to do, just desktop research, to kind of look at the growth trends, both in housing and economics and employment, to tell the story of what is going on in SQUIM, and what could potentially be expected in the future. Next slide. And then the second 2 parts are the zoning and regulatory analysis and the implementation strategy. So we know there are questions about the HTLI zone, the EOA districts, what the city had kind of anticipated happening in those areas isn't, and what can be done to encourage development in those areas. The implementation strategy is something that's really important to us, and we hope is also going to be useful to you. But whenever we do one of these studies, we really like to provide something that you can take action on, things that are not just, oh, well, maybe you want to do this, or this is kind of where the market's heading. We want to be able to tell you, hey, if you do these things, you're going to get the investment that is in line with your goals. So that's going to be what the implementation strategy is. And so then we're going to move on to a discussion. We have some questions for you, and we're happy to take any questions that you have for us.
Anyone have anything on their minds before we move on? Otherwise, I'll start asking you guys questions. Okay. Well, as you can discern, we want to talk both about housing and economic development. I think starting with housing, Carla sent us the recording of the council retreat, whenever that was, a few months ago in February. And we had a listen to your discussion from that, which was really useful to hear the discussion about your overall hopes for housing in Sequim, but also about sort of locational thoughts regarding node development and density and things. So it'd be good to dive into those a little bit. But first, if anyone has sort of large scale priorities or goals for housing that you want to talk about and that we should be incorporating or thinking about, we'd love to hear anything about your sort of overall understanding or vision for what's needed in town as far as housing types, housing location, and other housing needs.
Jump right in.
Yes.
So I think one of my priorities and one of council's priorities is just a diverse range of housing types, really trying to make sure that each income band has a wide range of selections and opportunities, right, for housing. But that being said, I think we also understand that the lower income housing bracket might not be an appealing development for developers, right? Because there's not as much of a profit. And so whenever we talk about more housing, that income band or the, bottom 2 or 3 income bands really are kind of left out of the conversation. And so I would say that one of my priorities is how can we fix that? Can we fix that by making changes in the comp plan, or is it strictly market driven?
I don't know if we want to, if you guys want to keep going or whatever.
Since we started with the easy question, yes. One of my mantras has been not to isolate different groups of people in housing projects. I'm one of those old people that live in a senior housing place. I think I could benefit and other people in my community could benefit with screaming children running around a little bit, adding joy. But I think that would be really important. And you talked about how hard it would be for affordable housing to be, and affordable housing gets isolated from communities. We want the seniors over here, and we want, So I think we could be a better community if we diversified the locations of whatever type of housing community we have, because I think that's important.
1000% agree.
Thoughts on housing needs or location even? Yeah.
One of the things that we noticed in the retreat video is there was most people were agreed that having housing nodes throughout town, kind of like you were saying, makes a lot of sense. But there was some disagreement on whether there should be multifamily housing downtown, and I know that was had a lot to do with the historic nature of Washington Street. And so Andrew and I, as we were walking around and driving around the town, totally get that. It's a very pretty, very cute street. But we didn't know if there was maybe, if you had any thoughts on potentially allowing that kind of housing, like one street north or south of Washington, or like downtown, but not right on Washington.
Yeah, I had thought about that too. And I think my biggest concern would be the traffic impacts, just because Washington and Sequim Ave are both so traffic heavy. I mean, in my mind, I'm not a planner, but in my mind, it would make more sense for us, in my opinion, if that high density multifamily housing would be a block or two, or maybe two or three away from the main drag, just to try and, really lessen the impact of how much more traffic there would be. And maybe there wouldn't if everybody's walking, or biking. But in the world we live in now, where so many people drive cars and, we're out here kind of in the middle of nowhere. And so people will drive to like Seattle or Silverdale or anything like that. But just trying to be mindful of the higher density and the impacts of that.
One of the discussions I heard from the community and continue to hear is we need that workforce housing level, and they're going to have families, and we also hear a lot of discussion about getting to the schools. And so I think if you can kind of incorporate what's going to be workforce housing closer to the schools, where the kids can walk instead of having to wait for a bus and take it all the way across town. I think those are some key issues as well. So that's all I have to add. Yeah.
One of the things we had discussed as well during that council retreat was and the ability to go up to a third floor, even, which would only add probably a couple of units per existing building. But I had seen a presentation by one of our low-income housing providers. I'm trying to think if it was Peninsula Behavioral Health or Serenity House or who it was, but they have a building back. I think it's off of 5th or 7th, and they would love the ability to go a third level up, but it's currently not zoned for that. And then I don't know I've seen some cities where they will build housing like that on the downtown quarter above shops, but is there an ability to limit it to, there's no parking available. So these are ideal units for people that are on the bus line that are walking everywhere, so that you don't have that additional traffic, because city of Sequim itself within the city limits is very walkable, but we've got these larger communities up on, Sunland is 900 homes, and those people all drive their cars when they come in. And if you drive in the middle of town, I don't know if you experienced the noon to 3 o'clock backup where it can get backed up several stoplights. It's a real issue.
Switching to economic development.
Real quick, I think Eileen had. Yeah.
We've been, and I didn't listen to your council meeting, your retreat. But one of the things that I feel like is missing in this discussion of affordable housing is somebody taking the lead to say, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to seriously do this, whether it's the city or find an organization. Habitat's busy doing their thing. Serenity House does a thing. But really, in Sequim, there's not much activity as far as affordable housing construction or discuss. We talk about it a lot, and I think we want to do it. I think the community, I think all the city council and planning people want to do it. So I really think we should put some effort into really organizing and identifying somebody that'd be willing to work with a contractor and make it happen, I guess, is my bottom line.
I'm just thinking about things like public land. We haven't really started talking about that, but just something to sort of put out there maybe as a potential for, looking for an affordable housing provider who's going to build something. If there's a site, if there's could be a future exploration of if there is some city-owned land that might be possible to use. You've seen that happen. We've been successful in a lot of places, of course. So just a thought that came to mind.
I was just going to switch to economic development for a minute, just to kind of understand what your main goals and priorities are for economic development. If it's, more jobs, more higher paying jobs, increased tourism. What are some of the goals that you have and that you've heard from your constituents?
So one of the things I think we have to work with is what resources we do have. We are on a peninsula, and I think we've got to develop an economy that works with that. This is certainly a travel and tourism destination. So I think that has to be one of the things we capitalize on. And I think service industries more so. I often hear that we want to have manufacturing jobs, but this is a tough place to manufacture, to get resources in and products out from. So I think if we focus, like, what are our resources? What is our unique, somebody said, I think it was in your slides, what is our value proposition? And then the economic development should focus and capitalize on those keys. And I just want to throw this out here. I think the one thing that we have that no other community here has is climate and weather. And so if we can kind of keep those at the top of the list as we're sitting and going through things, that may be helpful.
Yeah, I agree. I think laying on our strengths and less trying to bring in new, I guess, kind of economic development, and yeah, like focusing on tourism and natural resources, those kind of things.
I think with that said, kind of perhaps it's a both and with the increasing availability of broadband that doesn't depend on fiber or copper wire run through the ground or overhead. The attractiveness of this environment for tech sort of jobs would seem to be quite attractive. I don't know how to bring that in, but to Larry's point, we're not going to get a lot of transportation in for raw materials and transportation out for finished materials to try and attract some big manufacturing plant. We don't have a port, and we've got a single lane highway that has several bridges between here and a multi-lane highway. So I think the tech side of industry would be where we could be most attractive and less dependent on ground-based infrastructure.
Thank you, Councilor Butler, for bringing that up. Thank you, Kelly. And remind me your name? Larry, thank you. I agree with all of the things that you all have shared, and I want to build on that. In addition to tech, I think that a strong piece here is that folks are attracted to this place because it is a beautiful place to live. And that brings people who have a lot of soft skills to the region. And that, to me, says tech, but also call centers, also I don't have exactly the right word for it, but I think I've heard it called not tech, but light manufacturing. I feel like I've heard that word used potentially to refer to what I just described. Folks who have soft skills, who can work in call centers or do office type work. And I think that is a big strength of the peninsula.
One of the things that I think about a lot is, growing up here and living here most of my life, it's always like the tourism part, during the warmer months is great, but then we hit winter and all of the businesses are struggling. And so I think bringing up the tech, I think, is a really good idea to help kind of take the weight or take the burden off of like small business restaurants. Really, during the winter, it feels like all we have are restaurants that have to be supported by locals, and I don't know what the economy will look like in the next 10 years. Hopefully good. But, it's always, I try to be err on the side of caution and try to plan ahead. And so trying to figure out what lanes can we go down that can hopefully be the most successful for 20, 30, 50 years from now too.
Since we just talked about affordable housing, I think that's key to economic development. If we want businesses to come, they have to have someplace to live. So since we already got that solved, we just need to get some businesses in here or enrich the businesses we have. There's tourism. I volunteered down. I'm an expert. I volunteer down at the visitor center once a week. So I know. But what people, they come year round and they're asking questions, and a lot of people come in and ask about moving here. Well, I've been thinking about it for years, tell me about it. So what we have attracts people already. And bragging on the planning department, because one of the things you need to have a good place for businesses, and we've been restructuring some zoning in our city limits to encourage that and not discourage it. So we've been doing that, and we've been I forget what else I was going to say, but and the other thing I want to be sure that we continue to do is collaborate and be grateful for S'Klallam Jamestown Tribe for all they do for us, not just for us, but for our community. And they continue to do it, and sometimes I think we're not grateful enough. So we need to keep that up, because between the two of us, we can do some pretty good things.
I don't know what the statistics are on hotel occupancy in the wintertime, but it seems to me that we also need to take into consideration future growth in Port Angeles, because if they start going down the path of really developing that deep water port, it could attract more business activity there or tourism, especially if cruise ships stopped by. But that might be connected with people wanting to live here but commute for work or something else, because Port Angeles, we're surrounded on two sides, Port Townsend and Port Angeles, by port towns, and we're more of a prairie agriculture. But Port Angeles reminds me a lot of Juneau, Alaska, where I came from in the 80s, and watching it, trying to figure out who it is. And now they're trying to rein that back in because they have too much tourism. So I feel like there is a connection there.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I was working on a project in Juneau a couple of years ago, and they really do have a interesting housing situation up there as a result of the tourism and also their environmental constraints, which you don't have so much here as far as the amount of available land goes. But as we're sort of riffing on coordination here, coordination with the tribe, we had a great meeting with Luke today, and about coordination with Port Angeles and Port Townsend. Do you see, how do you feel the state of things is, across the peninsula as far as coordination? Or are there things you'd like to see sort of on the economic side, maybe specifically, or on housing? Because certainly people live here and work in either of those places. And in fact, having also worked on both of those comprehensive plans, at least half of the city planning staff in both of those cities that I was working with lived here, So I don't know. I don't know if anyone has any further thoughts that would be maybe of help just as far as when we're looking at, are there things that we need to look at at a sort of more holistic level as we're, looking at this report that might help inform the comp plan? Yeah.
I think that there was a really, really excellent housing summit hosted a couple months back by Tim Dalton at the county. That was a very, very informative, very eye-opening experience for me as a counselor, to go and be in the room with Carla and her equivalent from all of the various municipalities on the peninsula. Other counselors from the peninsula were there. There was a panel of developers, including folks who work on the housing that's built with nonprofit resources, and to be able to hear how things are unfolding in Port Angeles and in Forks. And the next time, I think there's an opportunity to do another one, for not only for us to all get in the same room together again, but also I'd love to have one with the Jefferson County people in the room as well. Just again, it was wonderful. It was a really helpful snapshot of the challenges and the opportunities, and to see the presentation content was excellent. Carla, I'm going to say it, you represented the city of Sequim very, very well in that situation. Thank you. And yeah, so I think that that was an excellent an excellent session, and I would love for there to be another one. And Tim Dalton's the name. I don't know if he recorded it or I actually have, now that we've said it, I do have still my copy of the information, so I could share that.
So we already talked about how the climate and the weather differentiate SQUIM, but what are some of the other key differentiators that make the city an attractive place to live, to work, to invest? Thoughts on that?
I think one of our advantages, and we talked a little bit about how we're in the center. So I think our geographic location and I think our topography make it really more ideal than some of the other cities. And, especially when you start getting out to west of Port Angeles, that is a haul from civilization, so to speak, right? And so I think that's another key for us. We've kind of turned into, I think, a little bit of a retail hub for the peninsula because, again, of that centralized location. So
I was going to tag off of that too, because Port Townsend doesn't allow big box stores. Port Angeles is kind of built out, but Sequim, by allowing the big box stores, but they did it well. They're landscaped, they fit with the community. There's still room for more, so there's room for some economic growth there. But yeah, us being a hub, but maintaining that look that we want. And we've also we're kind of Alaska light. We've got both the sea and the mountains and everything. And the quality of our air is also partially why Pacific Northwest National Laboratory sited here for their research purposes. So it's really a quality area.
I'm just going to pick up on what you said. The lab, I think, is another significant resource for us here, and something that to kind of build adjacent to that in terms of technology and research and so on. It might be leveraged to attract other research sort of facilities, whether or not they're specifically associated with the lab or whether they're just adjacent to it.
Yeah, I feel like when we started working on this project, it took like a minute for the lab to even come up. And even so, I had been working in PA and been a little bit around here. I didn't know it existed, right? So I mean, it's a little under the radar, which I was saying earlier today too. But yeah, it seems like a really important thing to include in the story if we're talking about marketing the city and what's the angle. To the degree that it makes sense to talk about.
So I guess this is more applicable for the council members than the planning commission members, but we're happy to hear from everybody. What kind of wins in terms of housing or economic development would you be excited to sell to your constituents? Like, what are the kinds of things that if you could get it done, where you'd run on?
This might be a pipe dream, but I'm personally excited about the idea of all along Washington here and within a block or so off of it, any new construction or remodel of an existing building. I feel like if you could have an incentive for them to go do that second story, and there's been some new construction just on the west end, and it's just probably not something on their radar that they want to do, but why would they think, hey, let's go up another level? But I know we've got somebody across Washington over here at the old Gazette building looking at remodeling the upstairs for apartments. And it's like, it would just be so nice because you could have then younger people who maybe only need a studio or a 1-bedroom, don't need a car because they're on the bus line. I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I would see as a win, like any rentals, apartments, multifamily housing. I think that's what we need.
Yeah, exactly, Kelly. The number of people you mentioned earlier, the people that live here and work in PA or Port Townsend, my experience in our network is the other way around. The medical providers, dental hygienists, all that are living somewhere else, and they have to commute into Sequim because we just don't have housing for that economic level. So multifamily housing, like you were talking about, Kelly, and so on, would be, I think, would really meet a need and would be easy to sell in a campaign.
A solution, an understanding, well, maybe a solution's too strong. A really clear understanding of where our short-term rental situation is at, and have a really well a plan with a lot of community buy-in and a lot of community input, so that everyone in Sequim knows this is how many short-term rentals we have. This is the solution that we all have agreed is a common sense solution for the percentage of our housing market, for example, that we would like to have as short-term rentals. And everyone feeling like, yes, we're here and this is a good thing for Sequim. So that would be a huge thing for me.
I don't know how much more, how much we want to talk about short-term rentals. I'm happy to keep talking about it because I think it is an important part of what we will need to look at. And it's a question which obviously is being asked, in general. But, has there been, well, there's obviously multiple sides to the story in the community, it sounds like. Are there things we should know about that have been going on, or, or any sort of further discussion you guys want to sort of provide as far as background on that, or sort of your hopes and dreams of where you all stand on, the sort of, mixed benefits and detriments of short-term rentals?
I'm not a council member.
That's
so
okay.
Take
That
this
was for
with a
everybody.
grain of salt. I do know that I believe Port Angeles tried to address this, and it becomes a political hot potato. Yeah. And I think that's, I 100% agree. Understanding what the situation is will formulate the ability to address if it is a challenge or not. We intuitively think it is, but just be aware that it's already a countywide issue. It's potentially viable.
Yeah.
And it's not just us. It's a problem everywhere, and it's so frustrating when it's a problem for everybody, but nobody's been able to address it with, also with a healthy compromise.
Well, we need some if we want tourists to come. So that's kind of the conundrum of how much and how to balance. And I think the people who own them during the winter times when it's slower, they do longer term rentals of their short term rentals. I have felt like it has been used as a default of our housing issue. And I'm not so sure. I think it might be a piece of it, but if you're going to blame somebody, I wouldn't blame them full time. I think there's a whole lot of other things for our housing shortage that we're trying to fix.
I'd just like to share that this topic was discussed very openly and in great detail with a presentation by one of the Port Angeles counselors at the recent Association of Washington Cities conference. The slide deck and all their data is available on the AWC website as connected to the conference. And it's that presentation was very eye-opening for me. I think that, like I said, we need to know, we need to have data. We need to have information before we can start saying anything. And I know that Port Angeles went through that process with information to understand how the number of short-term rentals were affecting or not, like there's so many variables out there in the economy and the community that and I studied economics while I was at university, so I know that correlation doesn't always mean causation, that when the number of affordable or short-term rentals are as such, and the housing prices are going up at the same time, and what is this balance, and how do we reach that? How do we reach an equilibrium that makes sense for everybody? So I would love for us as a community to start with a lot of really good data and get some clarity on exactly what is or isn't going on in our short-term rental situation. And then from there, we can take a look at what happened in Port Angeles and use that as a case study. And they learned some great lessons, and we can talk. I like talking to the counselors in Port Angeles. They're wonderful people, and we can learn some lessons from their experience. So thank you.
Yes, thanks for the discussion. I'm looking forward to diving into that part specifically because I think it's obviously very important.
I'd like to add to that we've got RV parks here that a lot of people will use for housing, but during the off months, it might be $800 a month, but then as soon as May 1st rolls around, it changes to $60 a day, and now these folks have to find somewhere else to live because they can't afford that. So there's a cycle of that with RVs that happens every year as well.
Yes. Oh, if I may, first cousin to RV parks would be manufactured home parks. And if you've followed progress here over the last year or two, we have an overlay to protect them from being redeveloped for other purposes. But if there could be nonprofits or a county or city that could provide the land without a big for-profit thing built in where their rents are always going up because they can and the people have no way out, so they're kind of captured. People really feel in a pinch that are in the manufactured home parks around here. If we have a topic on our agenda, all the seats are filled of people worried about being made homeless by a stroke of a pen of an absentee LLC in California. And then also, from my opinion, there's a slightly missed opportunity in the Lavender Meadows development that you saw. That's only maybe a third to half built out because it's on the profit. It's 55 and up only, so it excludes families from the proximity to the schools. And so I don't know, we can't undo or redo that, but with the prices for building houses going up so high, either prefab or manufactured homes, along the Lavender Meadows sort of density could be a solution for families if it were more of a nonprofit or some kind of co-op model. Would be fabulous to see. Thanks.
Thank you for bringing up the manufactured homes. I feel like there's a lot of challenges that we have to overcome, right? And a lot of those challenges come from state legislation. So not only is it like renter versus landlord, which is often how it feels, and it shouldn't have to feel that way, but it's also things like wages. The prevailing wage, like there's no way we can build affordable housing due to our prevailing wage being tied to the Seattle corridor. So that's one of our issues. So we just have all of these barriers that are tied to legislation that we may or may not be able to change. And so it's trying to find ways around that. Like, how can we find loopholes that can actually help the people that we need to help in our community?
Let's call them incentives, Rachel.
Right. But if we don't have those,
Are there any incentives that you guys have looked into implementing or discussed or debated?
I think it's been talked about, like mentioned, but I don't, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm trying to remember if there was anything that was like definitive. It's always kind of a, oh yeah, we should talk about that.
It does feel like a couple of years ago, there was an extraordinary case. It might have been with Habitat where some park fees were waived for the initial development. I don't know. That was before my time on the council, but I think that comes to mind. But I guess a great discussion would be, what are some alternatives for incentives that are in compliance with existing regulations that we don't have control of until we somehow get those changed if we need to?
A good point, if I may. Some of like park impact fees, correct me if I'm wrong, is probably oversimplification, but I think some of the impact fees to maintain parks are built on a growth formula that new growth will take care of an existing thing. And the fees might be more for someone who's in an apartment because they're going to be using the park more. And so you're penalizing the people who can least afford it, and the young families with children, whereas the existing homes may not be. It would seem like we should share the parks all around as a part of property taxes instead of focusing to make new homes more expensive. And I'm sure I didn't capture all the nuances of that.
That's all right. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I mean, I think we have talked for the past 10 hours a lot about impact fees with the development community today. So we had a lot of great conversations with every possible perspective on them. Well, maybe not every, but several. And I think, yeah, it's something we definitely can help to maybe set the stage for some conversations about that. Yeah.
Well, you were talking about incentives, and I know the city approved a grant application for Habitat to help them with some money. So within the city's purview, that has happened. I think it was a pretty good hunk of change, wasn't it, that we helped them get?
Yeah, well, money is the easiest incentive. You can definitely give people money. One of these questions we had thought about asking just has to well, the way we wrote it down here is, are there any pain points in the city where you would like to see development that have been underinvested in? I guess I would also sort of add to that, as we're talking about, especially about multifamily housing. And, you know, as mentioned earlier, we talked a lot about the, gosh, I can't remember what it's called now, HTLI and EOA zones, and I would say maybe the lifestyle zone. I mean, I don't know if we don't necessarily have to get super in the weeds, but if there are like specific areas when we're talking about regulations or even things like incentives that, you know, you want us to make sure not to forget or to focus on, are there any areas that come to mind in particular?
Are you talking about areas like geographically within city limits?
Yeah, either
Okay.
areas in town where you think are sort of ripe for change in land use side, or, multifamily housing, for example, or whatever the change might be. It could be commercial as well, or, specific zones, either way.
Okay. Yeah. One that definitely comes to mind. So I live in Elk Creek Apartments right across the street from the visitor center. And it's really interesting being in an apartment that's surrounded by fields. And not that that's a bad thing, but it's also like it's just such a great opportunity, and that could mean for more housing, or it could mean like, what if it's a great opportunity for like those nodes that we had talked about, if you have the people already living there, maybe it could be a great opportunity to get something started and see how it goes. But just also thinking about like how there's a daycare right there. And so wanting to be mindful of what goes in and how it impacts everything around it.
Big fields they go by or see a lot.
Yeah, I guess I would tack onto that. Also, the west end of town, kind of by Walmart, that whole like commercial area. There's not much over there other than Walmart. Just seems like ripe area that it's not getting used.
Which is also hilarious to me because it like looks like a commercial corridor, right? But then you have those vintage apartments who are owned by the company that owns the apartment complex I live in. And so it's such a weird, like to see this commercial zone, but then have this huge group of apartments, which is nice though for the people that live there to be able, like in walking distance, right? But it's also like, if it's not turning into commercial, what else can we change it to utilize that space?
And it's right next to the highway. I feel like that would help with the traffic issue if you're building multifamily housing over there.
I think there's one area that has been talked about in the corner of 101 and Squim Avenue. A lot of people, well, I don't know how many developers chatted about it and walked away for some reason, but either for housing or commercial. And there was a big vision of Fred Meyers moving there once. I like that one. But so that's a good one. And I drove by this, I had a vision on the way here behind St. Luke's Church. There's a community garden, and then there's a big blank area. It's just, I don't know a lovely development could go right there. So maybe somebody could donate it to us or something. I don't know.
I don't know where St. Luke's Church is. I'm going to look it up.
Are there any issues that, as we put this report together, we should be mindful of, that they're, hot button issues in the community, or like political third rails, things that have been discussed in the past that nobody wants to discuss anymore? Is there anything like that we should be aware of, or that we should be aware of and also try to address?
I think a lot of people, just as a blanket statement, have a problem with change. So we talk about, oh, yes, we want housing. Yes, great. We have 600 units coming in. No, not that housing. So I get very frustrated when I feel like, as a community, because it's not just the city doing things, right? It's like all these different businesses and all of these different organizations that work together to try and make things happen. And when we make things happen, there's always a group of people that have issues with it. And it's just frustrating when I've lived here most of my life, and I can tell people from experience, Squim has not changed. Like the heart of Squim, right? We are still a very tight-knit community. And just because more houses come in, that doesn't mean that will ever change, right? It's about people focusing on how they want to interact with other people. So I have a problem. I really struggle trying to explain that to people. And, just because things might change where we live, it doesn't mean that the heart of SQUIM will change.
The two things that I hear most about, and going kind of dovetailing here, the NIMBYs always talk about we don't have enough water, right? So I think whatever you're putting together, make sure you put in there, we got plenty of water to do all this stuff. The other thing that many people have mentioned is the infrastructure, the traffic up and down Washington. So it would be nice to build out Washington, but we heard a study the other day from the traffic guy that said our goal is an F, which is the lowest, worst you can get for a wait at a light. And let's make sure we don't make an F like a letter that doesn't even exist on the scale. Because I think that is a bugaboo, and there are many reasons why the city can tell you why it can't get fixed for quite a while. And then sewer stuff, because that's still being flushed out.
I was going to comment that one of the things I see chronically coming up is people move here and then they don't want it to change from that point forward. So it doesn't matter when they moved here. But I see a lot of sadness in seeing pasture disappearing, farmland disappearing. Now we've got the North Olympic Trust, which is wonderful. I think when we're looking at design elements in developments and downtown, any opportunity to incorporate something of SQUIM's heritage, images of barns, cows. Lavender Meadows used to be a big cow pasture, and it was fun to always drive by and see the babies. But things that can still incorporate trees, green spaces, historical elements, I think will help ease that, because every landowner has the right to sell their property to whoever they want to. It's going to happen, but the more we can retain that image, the better.
When we were talking about information, people not wanting change, or they think we're pulling something over on them, one of the city's done a great job of putting information on their website. The new website is amazing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And if somebody wants to know about a permit, a building project, you can pull it up. You can see their actual permit. If you want to know about water, they have a great section about water. And so when people ask me hard questions, go to their website, go someplace else. But that's a valuable information tool. And I think people just need to start using that more and letting people know. Because rumors are great, man. Rumors that people can make up.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like there's these two sides of communication that are floating into my head now, into like sort of internal and external. I don't know if this is even this is maybe too high level for this report, but just thinking about like, communicating with the public, with the community, communicating with, and then on the sort of economic development side, like marketing the city externally. So that's another form of communication about the things, that are great about it here and that are great about SQUIM that we've been talking about. And then also sort of getting that across to the residents, especially as things do inevitably change. So there's something there. I'll have to think about it some more, but it's good. It's a good sort of maybe overarching theme to explore in here.
Oh, okay. See, this is outside of the city limits, but it might be an interesting thing for you to see. The light industrial area off Carlsberg Road. That seems to be, I end up over there quite a bit, and seems to be working pretty well. Then also we have a semi-failed airport, Squim Valley Airport, that was going to be for residential development by pilots with hangar homes all around it. And I think it was overpriced or something didn't work. Whereas at Diamond Point, that's a really hot item, and $1 million houses now all around it. high in demand, and even Blue Ribbon Airport, where some biplanes used to do aerobatics before everyone complained and reported them. That's a going center for retired pilots and stuff. And Sequim Valley Airport sort of missed out on that. I guess it was a dream in the 80s. But anyway, the Carlsberg industrial area is an interesting one. If some of that were closer into Sequim, it's hard to see exactly where it'd fit, but it seems to be working. Anyway.
Thank you. Alex, that was the word I was looking for earlier. Light industrial, not light manufacturing. Oh, people with soft skills, light industrial. That's what I meant. In one of my day jobs, I work in a capacity where I work with a lot of scientists and research and around the environment, and looking at snowpack and drought and water conservation, and those. I guess it's because I'm so close to the information all the time, but that is a topic that it weighs heavily on me. I think that we, as a community, since the last 20 years have been the driest they've ever been. And I always tell people, can't be Western Washington. There's only 14 inches of rain. I grew up in Kitsap the whole rest of my life. And so it's like coming out here to Sequim, I was just like, where's all the clouds? So I know that we have done a lot of great things, and our city has had a lot of very progressive, forward-thinking people when it comes to planning and making sure that we do have the water resources that we need. But I want us to be really careful too, because that's the snowpack, the information about water availability, it's not going like this. I can tell you that it's all the information's going like this. So I feel like we should be careful, and we should be baking into our comp plan, into our recommendations, into, I don't know how specifically or how much, what's the word? Restrictive we want to be, but if we're welcoming a lot of new development, like, let's do it in such a way that we're doing it responsibly and sustainably, so that there's lots of recommendations for low flow fixtures and prioritizing, or some sort of maybe an incentive, I don't know, to have water wise landscaping, or why do you need a lawn in a place that only gets 14 inches of rain a year? You know, those sorts of questions, those sorts of guiding principles, ideas. And because I think about, how this place is going to look when I'm an old person and my kids are raising their kids here. And I hope they stick around in Sequim. It's a pretty cool place. Who knows? But in order for life to continue, water has to be available. So thank you. That's a piece that I'd like to share.
Thank you.
Oh, that brings to mind one other one. Let's see. I've heard one of the commissioners of the fire department say, any senior with a cardiac issue has no business living on this side of the Hood Canal. And if you look at property tax breakdown, the fire department fees are right up there, or maybe slightly more than our school fees, because the FD3 serving Sequim probably has one call to a senior an hour, sending an ambulance for senior emergencies, which happen in a cluster, maybe your last 3 to 5 years of life, and for some of the locals say, well, we're heaven's waiting room here, and that's how they've seen the newcomers, and then also here we are. I imagine you're aware of this, with OMC being our only level 3 trauma center or whatever that we're all dependent on, but with about is it 70 or 80%, or on Medicare or Medicaid? And Medicaid, which will be start phasing out after the midterms in 2026, I think. And so, in a way, to encourage a whole lot of seniors to move out here from the first responders' point of view, might be seen as irresponsible without the facilities to take care of them. Of course, life flight seems to be the way that rural areas that have lost their major hospitals and specialists will just depend more on life flight to fly them in to larger areas, and that may be what happens out here. But it's another consideration, and even people with there's so many animal lovers, and there's not a 24-hour pet emergency room. I think you've got to go to Silverdale. Oh, is there now? Oh, that's great. Okay, well, good for them.
I don't have the specifics.
Okay.
So I might be speaking. I'm not going to say too much, but I think that there is an entity that's trying to do pet emergency services, and their home base is close to the Oak Table. Yeah. Okay.
Wow. Oh,
okay.
Okay, that's awesome. Anyway, the hospital situation and a concentration of elderly in a rural place in the corner of nowhere really is something to have in mind. Thanks.
Well,
Are there any other questions that we haven't discussed that it would be really helpful for us to address in our report? Things that are really on your mind with regards to housing and economic development that we can help answer?
I guess I have a question for all of us here is, have we unintentionally been marketing Squim as a retirement haven? And as
Probably have for decades.
and so
Which is very frustrating raising a family and being
because
like,
we've got this wonderful Olympic Discovery Trail for bicycling, for families, children. I mean, are we needing to go a different direction in the way we're actually marketing the community?
Matt, oh, I was going to say use a microphone.
When I was contemplating moving here, because Kitsap, the situation that I was in Kitsap became not unfinancially sustainable for me, and I came up here to follow my partner's parents and raise family close to grandma and grandpa and all that jazz. For a long time I struggled because I was like, oh, Squim, it's a retirement community, and then I got here and I saw that it wasn't that. And there are other families. Hey, other family people. So it's and then of course, just because it's a common misconception, and I think that hopefully that whatever narrative comes out of Squim, it is changing. I hope that is the case. I hope that as people come and do all the tourism, that they do see that there's families here, and be pleasantly surprised like I was.
So are there 55 plus neighborhoods in the city limits of Squim? Okay.
Yes.
I would, back to the pain points question, I would say that is a pain point for me.
And to tag along with this change of the perception, maybe some of the marketing photos would be of the soccer fields that are full every night, all week on, and there's nobody over 55 out there playing soccer. Yeah. And our schools are full, and there are families here. And I was trying to explain this to somebody, and I thought, why do they think that? I thought, well, we don't hang out. You know, people my age, I don't go, what, if I don't have grandkids playing soccer, I don't go there. You know, I'm eating somewhere and drinking somewhere or something, you know, not, but, so I think it's a perception. And a lot of people have that and have had it for a long time, but I think we can fix that.
It'd be interesting to get some data from the chamber or the EDC on where are people largely coming from. I mean, we always hear about the Californians. Their reasons for moving here are going to be vastly different from, there's a large number of Alaskans here now too. And to an Alaskan who is in a landlocked town and they have a medical emergency and they can't drive out of your town, or if you get life flighted, it's a 2-hour flight. Coming down here and just having a 2-hour drive to Seattle seems like no big deal. So their perception in coming here is going to be different than somebody coming up from California, because I hear, when I see complaints from people who've recently moved here and they complain that they don't have a Trader Joe's or they don't have certain amenities and they have to go to Silverdale. And it's like, because they moved here from an area that was way more urban and had everything. So we've got a variety of different perspectives but it would be interesting to run the numbers on that.
Immigration data is tricky, but there is good IRS data into that. It's, yeah, the realtors too. Yeah. We had a good meeting with them today too, so.
Who asked if we had any more questions? I'm curious, sort of turn it back. You've said this is your first visit to Sequim and you've got significant experience around the Northwest with other cities in your planning. Are there things that stand out to you that we might just be taking for granted that you would want to wave a flag and say, don't forget this sort of thing? And maybe you need a little more time to reflect on your visit if you're just kind of 12 hours into it. So
that's a great question. Sorry. We have a colleague who really hates the rain and moved to Portland, and I've been thinking about her this whole trip because she used to live in LA. So I'm only slightly joking. We already know about the weather, but it is really amazing. But I don't know. I think that sort of to your point, you know, growing up in Portland, I guess all I ever heard about Sequim was retirement, you know, as well. And then the only other times I was here when I was a kid was just going to get the ferry, you know, in Port Angeles and coming through. So I think that yeah, it's there. I don't know. There's a bit of an off the radar quality, which I think, like, to me, it feels like there's a depth of things happening in a community that's like really strong. That's the impression I'm already getting, you know, having only been here for a day. Although, yeah, and I think that's been reflected in a lot of what we heard today.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there's from everybody that we've talked to, you folks, the people that we talked to earlier today, the city staff, there is like a real strong sense of civic mindedness here. And I think it is reflected, like, you know, when you walk down the street, it's like a tidy community. You know, it seems like a place where people care about where they live. And I think that that's a hard thing to, like, there's no data on that, right? You can't say like 98% of people throw their litter in the trash can, you know, like,
Yeah.
but there, you know, that is something that you feel when you come into town. And then also, you know, when we were walking downtown last night, you know, we noticed there's not a lot of retail vacancy downtown. And, you know, we're from Portland, there's a lot of downtown vacancy. But also in a lot of other cities, there's a challenge attracting that kind of retail. And I know that there are issues with workforce housing, and some of the businesses aren't able to stay open as many days of the week as they would like. Some of the restaurants close on the early side. But I think it is, it's nice to see it. When I came into Sequim, it felt like a community that cares and that, you know, is healthy, I guess, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. So I think that's great.
Yeah, and I would also add that I think, you know, so we're talking about economic development and attracting people or employers or whatever, like marketing the city overall. There's there's cities where we work and the vibe, or I shouldn't use the word vibe, but you know what I mean, like the sort of spirit or feeling you get is less distinct, and I feel like already I'm getting this feeling like that that's something marketable in and of itself, so.
Can I add one more quality? We have a very rich art and music community too. It's pretty, I mean, music's everywhere. Sometimes small groups, sometimes big groups. Our art gallery, does everything to include student artwork, and we have a bird fest where the high school kids make ceramic birds to sell. I mean, it's a real big deal year round. So that's kind of cool too.
I just thought of something that the feeling I get here in the core of downtown and even on the east end, because there's people always walking around on the sidewalks and shopping. I feel like the east end of Washington is a little bit disjointed. There's some empty space, long time empty space in that QFC parking lot. There are apartments and various things over there, but you just don't see people like walking and socializing and doing things at that end of town. I feel like there's a missed opportunity there. And I can't put my finger on it though.
Yeah. Anything else? Any other questions for us, or thoughts? Of dreams. All right. Well, yeah. Thanks all for your time and great feedback. I know there's been sort of a protracted process here with this comp plan, and a lot of people have been asking you for your visions for the city. So we appreciate you taking the time to talk to us as well, and we'll endeavor to get you something that will be helpful and fit with this great community.
Thank you so much. I think that I can speak for everybody when I say that we really appreciate you coming in and trying to get people's feedback and opinions and talking to stakeholders and talking to us. And it is a community effort, right? And so being able to let people know and remind them, like, you're not isolated. You are absolutely a part of the process. So I'm just really appreciative for you guys being here today. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Andrew and Jennifer. They'll be here tomorrow, and they have a less intense agenda less rigorous than today, but they still have a few more people, a few more stakeholders that they'll meet with. But again, thank you for your time. And I know as you guys were saying some comments, I was remembering that we've had a couple sessions with both of you, with the Planning Commission, or Travis and I have over the last couple months, and a lot of these things were like, oh yes, the reminding of these issues, and so it's important. And I just want us to say thank you again for just taking the time to kind of share the things on your hearts and minds about the community. For Jennifer and Andrew, what their work's going to do is it's a direct link to the comprehensive plan. The future land use map is going to be informed by a lot of what they heard today from the stakeholders, what you've shared, what city staff has experienced over the years with potential developers and property owners, and looking at the barriers and opportunities for a lot of that vacant land. It was, we had kind of this chuckle this morning where Andrew's like, well, I took like a dozen pictures of vacant land. Like, we've been looking at it on computer screens as part of the land capacity analysis. And now he got to see it, in 3D of like what we're talking about. I've spent the last few months here with you, so I just wanted to just kind of give a few, if I may, a few thoughts where it's like, there is so much opportunity here in Sequim, and we are at a moment in time that I think Leland understands. We certainly, Travis, and we certainly do, that the comprehensive plan, and I know you do too, because we've talked about it. The comprehensive plan is at a watershed moment, and we're just really thankful for your support and us being able to do it and do it in a way that will be reflective of the community. And so there's still quite a bit of work left to do, but like there is a lot of good that we can do through this comprehensive plan. So again, thank you for your time. The other thing I forgot to mention is that the economic development research that they'll do, as well as speaking to the stakeholders, and you guys, we have an economic development chapter in the comprehensive plan. There's definitely even follow-up development or economic development initiatives or strategic planning that we can do. So like this is the beginning of a series of work that can be accomplished too on that side. So just again, thank you so much, and we'll see the Planning Commission in a couple weeks. So thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Any closing comments before I motion to adjourn? All righty. I move to adjourn. Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye. Excellent. Thank you so much.